here. There's a whole bunch more proposed. We're a long way north of Vancouver. Vancouver is where Tag Oil is based. Apache Canada, a subsidiary of Apache Houston, is working your land. I just want to say that what they do here and what they do there is not done in my name, the name of my people. I apologize on behalf of my people and my country for what's happened here, but please know that it was not done in our name. We are the center of the gas industry in Canada. We're adjacent to the oil sands, which is the largest industrial development on Earth, and we have the site of the world's largest fracs to date. This map is the treaty signed in 1899. My father is Etcher Denning, and my mother is Denning Zell. This is the symbol of our nations. This is my father's people here, and there's Moose and my mother. That's her people there. The land that we have, my father's traditional territory alone, will be bigger than the North Island. We come from a very vast territory, but on that territory, we practice traditional activities. This is me with my first caribou 2 years ago. This is my grandmother tending a moose hide. The moose track is this thing on my arm. This would be a traditional smoking setup. And part of what I want to convey to you is that for us, as I think it is here, with many people who live on the land, be Maori or not, that we're close to the land and that the land sustains us. And that's relevant to what's going to come after. This map is a map of my territory, and this is the BC portion of Treaty 8. That's my father's nation. My mother's nation is this little dot here, and the nation I work for is right beside it. For getting a bit shaky and a bit nervous here. So this is the map as of 2005. This is sort of a general map. This shows you, these are oil and gas roads that were built as of 2005. This next slide will show you, hopefully, big files. Okay, there we go. These are oil and gas processing facilities. These, and you'll see that these are kind of split into two main areas. This is now the Horn River Basin, and this is the Montney Basin. So these are two plays, these are two fields. You have to understand that oil and gas in my territory has happened since the 50s, so we've had massive oil and gas. These are seismic lines. The exploration lines I referred to earlier, these are 2D and 3-dimensional seismic activities. So cats and men with chainsaws running through the bush, cutting a line, drilling little holes, putting dynamite down, and hydrophones or seismophones, picking up what comes up, and mapping the subsurface geology. This is a combination of those things. It's not to scale. You have to realize that on the land, it's not quite as dense as it looks, but this gives you an idea of the density of the territory within which I come. And this is how it looked in 2005. My land, like this land, is very rich in resources, and so we have been dealing with this issue for a long, long time. Both of my grandfathers are chiefs, and they had issues with this. This is the trajectory of wells drilled in British Columbia. At this point, they're counting something like 28,000 wells in the province I'm from, all of which are in northeast BC. I mean, there might be a few exploration wells in other areas, but the vast majority of oil and gas is, of course, restricted to where the oil and gas is, and that's, unfortunately, the territory that my people come from. And you'll notice the spikes. This spike in particular, this is the recent stuff, and from here forward, it's gone even higher. There we go. In 2005 and 2006, I came home from my undergraduate degree, and because I'm one of the few people in my territory that have post-secondary education, I was asked and given the privilege of working on behalf of our people, my people, for the chief and council to engage with the oil and gas industry. The oil and gas industry, like here, has to consult, and so what they did is we get like stacks and stacks and stacks of paper. Massive amounts of paper, and they would say, we want to do this. And my chief and council chose me to go and try and respond to that process. High volume slip water hydraulic fracturing and horizontal drilling are the two technologies that came together, are the Barnett Shale in Texas that precipitated a game change as it's determined by the oil and gas lobby. And what happened is the province that I'm from, which has the right to sell the land under the federal structure of Canada, started selling land very quickly and at great profit. In 2005 to 2009, I'll give you the numbers, but as of 2008, $9.24 billion. Government revenue, $6 billion since 2005. The value of the lands upon which my people were privileged to be born that sustains us is massive. And I offer that, one, to illustrate the scale, but also to illustrate the things that you might face as you make decisions about your land. Understand that these are profoundly profitable enterprises, and that the game change, the slick water and like high volume slick water hydraulic fracturing and horizontal drilling has precipitated massively profitable industries and massively profitable endeavors. So I was an oil and gas officer from my mother's nation. I became very familiar with the oil and gas industry very quickly because we had literally thousands of applications every year. I then became a land manager for my mother's nation, which is just down the road from us, about 1,000 people. And my job was just to engage on any issue that related to land on behalf of the nation. So that's mining, that's oil and gas development, that's forestry, that's everything, like hydroelectric development, those kinds of things. The patterns that we noticed were massive amounts of referrals. We were getting on average 2,000 referrals a year, and changing laws in relation to water, environmental regulation, the royalty structure in the province. And there's no specific law where I'm from on economic benefits agreements and the sharing of profits, but there's informal law and recognition that those things should occur, and that altered as this industry came online and started to get more and more developed. We noticed community conflict both within our communities between, like for example, my mother worked for BP until the Deepwater Horizon spill. My father is vehemently opposed to the industry, and even within me, like my own family, half my family is somewhat supportive, and half my family is out and out opposed. My family's approved to go to the Supreme Court of Canada 2 weeks ago, and we're taking a case to the highest court in the land at great cost to try and address some of the issues that came out of this. But I want to point out the community conflict. I think that it's a real honor and privilege to see you guys come together in this way, this proactively. We didn't do this very well, and as you'll see, we suffered as a consequence. And we did see what I term marginal economic opportunities. There was economic opportunities, there's a lot of development in the initial stages, as I think you've been referred to in the Taranaki case. We saw that as well. And I resigned in 2008, 2009, because I thought that law would be a better use of my time in the short term. This is a map of Fort Nelson. This area here would be about the size of the North Island. This is oil and gas development as of, I think it's 2009, so these are three-dimensional seismics. You see some wells up in here, the Horn River Basin. This is when the boom really starts. This is as of last year. So you see a lot more 3D seismics. You need three-dimensional seismic activity, three-dimensional seismic research to accurately map the underground subsurface geology, and that allows for very accurate fracks, which in turn increases the amount of gas you can pull out. You'll see a massive increase in well drilling up in here and in here. What you don't see on this map is the various families that have trap lines all throughout. My family in particular, we have three. My name is on the trap line out here. And what's happened, well, I'll get into what's happened, but it's been very substantial as these things happen. So this is just a brief slide about the negative impacts that we saw. The most obvious is linear disturbance, roads, pipelines, well pads. This is just the infrastructure that allows the oil and gas to be extracted. The pollution, and interesting for a country that's so concerned about your indigenous flora and fauna, which is so beautiful and lovely, that's something to consider. That for us, we didn't recognize that incoming trucks, incoming drill rigs would bring things. And that was very unique and unanticipated, at least the scope and scale. Runoff dust, carcinogens is a big issue in my territory, and carbon dioxide. And I just want to say that where I'm from, the gas that comes out of these fields is taken over via pipeline to the tar sands. And so some of the most energy-intensive gas in human history is being used then to go extract some of the most energy-intensive oil in human history. And the country I come from, the country that tells me that I'm actually Indian, this carbon pocket, has done some very egregious things to Mother Earth, and I apologize for that to the extent that I can. I'm sorry that my country has done this. I just want to acknowledge that on the CO2 thing, because CO2 affects all of us, everywhere. There's a lot of interference with First Nations land users because of roads, because of pipelines, because of security concerns. There's pipeline bombings in my territory, and as a result, there's a lot of fences and a lot of private security that was put up. I wouldn't suggest that's something that might happen here, but if it was to occur, you have to recognize that the security apparatus of industries that make billions of dollars annually is very effective, and it impacted us in a very serious way. My ability to hunt, my ability to go get the moose that sustain my people and allow me to live is impacted because I can't go certain places anymore, and that's a result of security and safety. Water is a massive issue. I could go into, well, I could go somewhat into the technical aspects of it, but essentially water contamination, water disposal, and massive extraction are kind of the three critical issues that we saw. Localized seismicity was increased. As of 2009, there was never a recorded seismic event in the Horn River Basin. As of last year, there was 38 recorded seismic events. I don't know the highest. There would have been 3.5, I believe. So localized seismicity is a contentious issue. The industry will tell you one thing, the government will tell you something else. I will tell you that from our territory, we never had earthquakes, even small ones, and now we do. Whether that correlation is causal, I can't say. There might be confounding factors that I'm aware of, but I will suggest that that's a peculiar relationship at some level. And then there's community impacts. And one of the things that I don't think a lot of people, and I see very rarely in government and industry talking about, is the incoming workers and the incoming people who come to your land bring things with them. On payday in my territory, when 10, 15,000 men get very large paychecks and 15, 20 grand for 2 weeks' work, town goes crazy. Coke, drinking, prostitution, violence. These things occur quite regularly and at regular intervals. And it's been very difficult to convey that and say, like, what happens when you make this much money in territory isn't always positive. Dollars do not intrinsically equate to positive development. A community that gets very rich very quickly, particularly a community that doesn't have a lot of wealth previously, has difficulties with that transition. I think that's something that people should be aware of, and I wish government and industry were more aware of how that process impacts people. And violence against women in particular is something I care about very deeply, given my family experience and history, and that's something that has plagued our people. And I can't, it's hard to talk about. And then there's the internal dissension in my family, my mother versus my father, and these things. And that's, again, I hope you guys stand together in this community, all members, because that dissension will be utilized by those who have this development occur, and it's something to be aware of. So this is just sort of a general slide outlining what we saw as major impacts. I hope it's there we go. These are examples of linear disturbance. This is laying a large diameter pipeline. This is a supposed stream crossing that went awry, and this water should run clear, and it doesn't. This is the Whakatu gas plant. It'll be a bit over 5 times your domestic production, about 220 million tons of CO2 annually. It's the largest gas plant in Canada, and what's happening in my territory will affect it at some level. It will affect the globe. When you have 220 million tons of CO2 coming out of one point source, that's a big issue. And I'm not suggesting that we might happen here on that scale, but I think we have a collective responsibility, which is why I acknowledge the air and the water and the land that we share. And then this is what you might see. Our territory is relatively wet. We live in Muscade country in one part, and my father's people. And so you see a lot of water. This would be a water pit. That might be where wastewater is put, one or the other. And this is interference with safety. So you'll see these signs all over the place. The oil and the gas comes on my territory. Some of this what we call sour has an appreciable hydrogen sulfide component. Hydrogen sulfide is a very efficient, effective neurotoxin. I think 300 parts per million is fatal. It's very, very dangerous stuff. And so where we might have been able to hunt back here, no longer will we able to. You also see the snow content from my territory in the wintertime, which I do kind of miss. This is some water issues that we saw. The fluids used in fracking are known carcinogens. I noticed earlier there was mention of benzene. Benzene can be a side product of the production of oil and gas. It's also a component in diesel. Benzene is a non-threshold carcinogen, meaning that any exposure to benzene, even if there's like a government standard that says there's some is okay, any exposure to benzene has an appreciable risk of cancer in humans. It's non-threshold carcinogen. Anything is a consequence. And so these kinds of issues, my grandfather passed on from cancer. I was in Taranaki yesterday and speaking with some folks, and I believe that region has the highest incidence of MS in this country. And there's peculiar patterns of cancer. And again, I'm not going to suggest that there's a causal relationship necessarily. It's very difficult to prove out, very convenient as well, that you can't prove how you got cancer. It's a known issue. But there's peculiar correlations. And again, that's something that we've been very concerned with in our territory, given how people who live on the land, live very healthy lifestyles, die of cancer at a relatively young age. The elders in particular are scared to drink from the water, and the animals that sustain us are also impacted. And I don't know how that relates here, but it's something that we've known. I think the animals are really important here, some of the cows, but other things as well, and I would suggest that's something to be aware of. On the waters in particular, there was water drawdown, so just the taking of water. There's also been the transfer of water from natural streams to holding pens and things like that. But one thing that's interesting that we didn't anticipate until we saw it was the privatization of water. Because the market and the government said, we have to regulate water, we don't want the industry to take too much, let's incentivize the process by adding a pricing mechanism. And it's a slippery slope in my territory. We are very, the traditional stories and the backgrounds and the histories and the prophecies of my people suggest that water will be the critical issue. In the end times and the hard times, water will be what is at the center of the conflicts that will bring trouble to the human species. And so water privatization is a particularly contentious issue where I'm from. And I don't know how it is here. You have lovely water, and I've drank from streams walking around on the tramps, and I'm really amazed at how beautiful it is. We had earthquakes, and again, as I said, we had since 2009, 0 previously, 31, my mistake, earlier in this small area. And it's not on a major fault line, which is peculiar. I believe you guys are, I believe some of the offshore proposed blocks are on a very, very major fault line, and the biggest on Earth. But again, that's an issue. These are impacts. This is a statement. I'm going to ask you guys to read this. I won't read it out, but my grandmother wrote this. My family, my mother's people, took a court case about the eradication of caribou. And my grandmother made an affidavit to the Supreme Court of British Columbia, which will be eventually probably end up in the Supreme Court of Canada, about the importance of that animal relative to the culture. And I don't want to just say like indigenous culture. I mean, all cultures have a tie to the land, in my experience. And our culture is tied like this. So if you don't have the caribou, she can't convey the lessons that those caribou have for us. And I don't want to suggest I know how it works here for you guys, but I think it's something to be aware of. And that's a flare in the night sky. This is an incident, as it's termed in my territory. This is a blowout that occurred in 2007. That flame is approximately 200 feet tall. It burned for a bit over 30 days. I took that picture from a helicopter when I was working for my mother's nation. And this was a blowout. So this is a high pressure kick that took out the blowout preventer, which is the same thing that happened with the Deepwater Horizon spill, and then was ignited. This is sweet gas, so it's not, it is poisonous, but it's not going to kill you if you take one whiff. Had this been sour gas, had this not been lit up this way, you could have had something like the Bhopal incident in India that killed 3,000 people. The gas that comes out of the land has a lot of things in it that humans shouldn't be exposed to. And so in a way it's good that this burned, but the problem was the dispersal from this fire is very difficult to map, and so we don't know where all the constituent elements of that combustion ended up. And when oil and gas burns, peculiar chemicals get created in that heat. And this is a point I wanted to speak to as well. A rich community can be dangerous. So this is my cousin Wrangling, who died at 12 years old. This is my cousin Joshua. My name's Caleb Joshua. We were named together. We were like twin sons from 2 different guys. Both have passed on. He was killed in a dirt bike accident without a helmet, and he was killed driving home from a shopping trip after a payday. And again, I wouldn't attribute that directly to Apache Canada, who's one of the largest landholders in my territory, but I think this is a good example of how a wealthy community can be risky for the young people in particular, but for all people. I'd like to acknowledge my past as well. But on the other hand, there are positive impacts that will be touted to and put forward to you as well, and I have to admit that they exist in my territory. There have been a large increase in First Nations-owned businesses. There's been a general increase in employment all over the board. Our government revenue has increased. For the consultation process alone, for those 3,000 referrals, we get about 1.4 million. Well,